I'm so happy now, like a kid in the candy store. The King of Monday, I'm back with you. My brother.
Man. That title stuck, huh?
Yeah.
That's all right. Shout out
Well,
to
if we do shows every day, you'll be the king of every day. Welcome on in, Sister Diane. Yes. Benjamin Banneker today. But listen, talk to me. How are you feeling, brother?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling good. Yeah, every time I connect with you and the family, man, it's like a high point. You know, it's like a energy shot, energy boost. And that you can't get, you know, you're fighting against these forces all week long. And then it's like when you come into the house with the family, it's like, you know, you can let your hair down.
There you go. Symbolically for me, because, you know, I shave mine off all the time.
But yeah, man, how you doing? You doing good?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Yeah, you've been in the ring a lot this week.
Yeah, I feel creative. I feel good. All the plans are working out according to plan, and even ahead of plan. So
yeah,
I visualize, I focus, and let the chips fall where they may. But I know pretty much where they're going to fall. So yeah. So it's a good feeling.
Yeah, and when you move in that kind of energy, like Dr. Miles Monroe was saying, when you got the keys and you align yourself with the kingdom, you can't fail.
Right.
But at the same time, like a lot of things you're talking about, unfortunately, our people not knowing who they are going to attack you.
That's right.
Because they have been indoctrinated with this same counterfeit spirit, not knowing that they are connected to something greater, which we're going to discuss today. But unfortunately, that's just where we are. And the good part about that is there is no power great enough to stop the alignment that we're with. So
there you go.
They can bring you down and say bad things about you, or they'll go to their number one weapon where they go and find something in your past. You know, like it's amazing. I listened to things like when Jesse Jackson passed. Now, here's one of the greatest men that ever walked the earth. Nobody cares nothing about all these conspiracy theories or what. This man did so much for the human race, not just for Black people either.
Right. Right.
And so their thing is the little power that they have to deny this man to lie and state for the nation to honor. It just shows you the caterpillar mentality of those that worship Azul, that they have no connection with real spirituality. So they get a surge of this power, just like when a vampire gets blood. They get a surge of this power like they used to do back in slavery, because they have power over your body and your movement. So this gives them some type of feeling that they're superior. Right. But nonetheless, brother, you know, to our brother today, man, one of the definitely the top 50 greatest, not just Americans, but men that ever lived.
Right.
And if it wasn't for this brother, if you want to start out with your banner, I'll let you go in with your thoughts, and
most definitely
we'll go from there.
Yeah, I wanted to keep his name pronounced like I usually do when we're speaking about somebody very special. And in the title, I put the mind that measured the stars. So that encompassed so many things. I wanted to have symbols behind him instead of saying what he's good at or what he did. I wanted to have the symbols, you know?
Yes.
So even if you look at the J behind Benjamin, you'll see the Capitol building, you'll see the monument, you know, to show you that he mapped out Washington, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you'll see how he studied the sky. You see how he's a mathematician by the signs back there, the symbols.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to be surreal and stimulating, because sometimes and oftentimes, like we said before, people learn differently. Some people see things better. Some people hear it better. Some people read it better. You know, so with the symbols and different things behind him,
Yeah.
It'll kind of let you know when you read up on them, or when we talk about them, then it'll make all sense. So that's pretty much my logic behind that. And a face,
Yeah.
a face is very important whenever you
Oh yeah.
are speaking about someone or have a situation. Because like we said before, when a child is born in the crib and the mother or father looks down at the child, that child, even though they may not know the language, they can read the expressions on the face, hundreds of
Absolutely.
expressions, not just happy and sad. So with advertising, that's very important. A more effective advertisement or billboard or ad has to always have a face in it, because we can identify with that face, even if we don't know the person. More so, it's a human thing. And so that's why I always like to have faces on my banners and different things as opposed to just words. Yeah.
And the striking contrast about this is, I like the words, the mind that measured the stars. When you look at the two greatest gifts, let alone being in one man, is astronomy, what we know as astronomy, or the ability to read celestial language, and mathematics, which is the universal language and terrestrial language. And then to look at, it's something about, because see, we've been told that modern looking things are progressive. That's not necessarily true. When you look at, so he created a sundial, right? He created a clock. He created a telescope long before these ideas were even, thought of. And we're going to go in today about this, brother, because, again, one of the great things that we have been afforded, and why, I get it, why they upload a lot of these different things that our people are dealing with from an emotional standpoint. But again, we're missing a great, great opportunity to educate now.
Right.
And brothers like you, I always like to give you kudos, brother, because you stay focused on the task at hand.
Thank you, brother.
We can't keep getting pulled down these same dark alleys, okay, when we know that we have an open enemy. Yeah. Now, if you're still grappling with the fact that we have this open spirit, well, I can't say spiritual energy because they're not in the spiritual realm.
Right.
Because they have a calcified pineal gland. So it's at best 90 degrees. But the thing about a 90-degree existence is it has to be powerful. It has to put forth like this warlike mentality, or this overpowering masculinity to compensate for other weaknesses. It's just like if you're blind, you can hear crickets in the distance. So, life compensates for things when there is a deficiency in a certain area. Just like when you take dominant and recessive genes. Well, we all know that there is a deliberate act to put two recessive genes together to produce a certain looking thing, right?
Right.
But as long as the dominant and the recessive come together, this is why you have to get rid of black and brown people. What's her name? Dr. Frances Cress Welsing brought this point out magnificently, that in their subconscious, their thing is the white ball has to be the last one on the pool table, and it has to knock the black ball in, Mother Earth to win. So again, we have the blueprint from our scholars. Our issue is we are still being led by the tail and the head, okay, of people who are diametrically opposed to spiritual, divine, and natural laws.
Yes.
So, yeah, man, I'm excited today because I know that in their history books, the things that we're going to discuss today about this great man, who, by the way, when we tell this story, it's going to be amazing. I think I told you once before, I found out not too long ago that his grandfather was a king of the Dogons or Hogon.
Wow.
Which is amazing in itself. And we're going to tell that story because it's proof. This is another reason why they keep putting us against the diaspora. Because see, at a certain level, it's spiritual. But they still have you down here. Okay, and that's the only way they can win anything. And again, unfortunately, you know, we have at least 40% of our people, like Dr. Amos Wilson always tell us, that are compromised, or else they couldn't accomplish this. So yeah, brother, again, thank you, man, for that great banner. You look at that clock. We know that he invented the first clock, and we're going to talk about all this today. And the clock also symbolizes time, which is a mathematical function, right? And we see that sundial and the capital there. You know, I'm always amazed that, and again, we'll go into this today with the visuals as well, how you have people today in a house that was built not only by enslaved people, but the mastermind that the Creator gave you. There would be no Washington, D.C. or capital without this great man. There would be none. So the eumelanin energy is responsible for arguably the greatest capital in modern history. But yet you have no representation from amongst these people in your current government. Of course, we know why, because of Azul. The spirit of Azul will not allow them to coexist with Black people. And that's why they always feel like they have to try to get away from us, because then our energy will overpower them in any situation.
Right.
So yeah, brother, I wanted to start out today, before we get into the serious aspects of the visual. I want to start out with Merlin, that picture that I sent you of Merlin, and then also, what's his name? The kid that's the, what's his name? Harry Potter.
Okay, let me see here.
Okay.
Okay. Let me see. Because they're so small from what I can see. So they're very tiny. So let me just jump.
Okay.
So we get there.
Start. Well, if you can hit Merlin, and we'll come back to him. This kid. No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just showing all the whole show.
That's it.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Okay, thank you. So now this is something that we have to get out before we even get into the presentation. Again, like everything else, we know that imagery is very important. That's why your banners are so important to what we do as well, and to your work. Is because imagery, along with symbiology, has a major psychological effect on people. Now, this is a fictional character called Merlin, but yet this is what is put before the world, or at least the United States, and as someone who has some great magical power, which we know he does not. Okay, we already know this. However, the sad part is more children in the United States will know this face than one of the greatest Americans that ever lived, that actually designed our capital city. Isn't that something? And that tells you something about the way that we are educated. I guarantee you that 90% of any of our children can tell you that this is Merlin. There are no movies made about Benjamin Banneker, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are several movies made about Merlin, the magician. One was a famous series they did on him. So this is an example of what has happened to our people psychologically. Okay, brother, you can go to the one with Harry Potter, because this is the one I'm more concerned with. Okay, this is the one that
I keep forgetting.
Yeah, the Harry Potter. You had it up first. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Now, this is the one, again, if you ask our children to identify this individual, and see, all of this is done on purpose, brother. This is not just for entertaining kids or the lives they
right.
tell. And then you put the picture of Benjamin Banneker up against him. Maybe 95% of the children or higher can identify Harry Potter, but they have no idea. Isn't that something? Mm-hmm. Of who Benjamin Banneker is? However, if Benjamin Banneker was a white male, he would be on Mount Rushmore.
Yep.
Literally. He would be. And we're going to go through today, we're going to go through as we celebrate this great brother, great American, who by all means, they should have a statue on the Capitol of him. Mm-hmm. So we want to go to this, the visual with Earth, Wind, and Fire, the one I always like to use.
Yes.
Because, see, this is what our people have to get. Our downloads come from a spiritual level that no one else is attached to. Mm-hmm. Okay? And Earth, Wind, and Fire being ahead of their time, my favorite group, this was such a powerful point that they brought out.
Yeah.
Back when people wasn't even thinking about this.
Right.
Okay, that you came from the Nomo. Okay, you are, who you are is part of an electromagnetic spectrum that's greater than anything or any power known to man. And that has got to sink into our people, because we've got to get away from this worshiping of men, their titles, the fake fiat that they say. And it's, again, as soon as one of our brothers or sisters get to that level, that Azul level, where they're being paid this fiat to destroy our culture, because that's what it involves.
Right.
And if they buck against that, as you and I were talking privately, we know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So yeah, let this picture sink in, because today, the individual that we're talking about is connected to this in a great and mighty way. Okay, brother, thank you, man.
Yes.
So,
sure.
If you want to start out, I'll just start out before we go into another visual. Mm-hmm. I just want to put a couple of scripts out here, because at the end of the day, this is what locks our people in. The problem is, like we always say, we don't have an issue with the Bible. We have an issue with the interpretation and expression of it.
Right.
Of course, we know that things were changed, but the primary premise is that our people have to look to a different type of expression and comprehension of this to actually see what's being said to us. So the first one is Hosea 4:6. It says, and this is probably one of the most quoted scripts, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. But no one ever says, what knowledge are we referring to? Okay. The knowledge of divine and natural laws and principles that you don't follow, that we just saw with the Earth, Wind, and Fire picture that you're connected to, but you've been severed from that, just like when the baby's umbilical cord is cut. That's very, very important. Okay, so what Hosea is saying is, and of course we know these are not the names of the people, but we'll
Rightly
go.
So.
That my people are destroyed by lack of knowledge. Well, they're not talking about academic knowledge, okay? They're not talking about, this is one of the other reasons when they call you low IQ, that should be something you should be proud of, because they're basing it on a 90-degree standard when you're a 720-degree being.
Right.
See, anytime they say, and they're right, you should be low IQ in a caterpillar system because you're a butterfly. You're not.
You're above it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're above that. So when you hear them say that, what they're referring to is the intelligence that they know of, which is worship of man, fiat, material things, and caterpillar behavior, low vibratory behavior. This is what they're saying you're a low IQ with, when you don't chase after that. So when you really look at what these counterfeit spirits are saying, they're saying, we know you're connected to something different or higher than us, so therefore you're low IQ in our system. I don't know if that makes sense to people. And Lance, I know it makes sense to you.
Oh yeah, I'm right on it.
Yeah, and the people in the family. But the thing is we're going to look this squarely in the eye today, and we're going to see why you are different than all other people, no matter how much they keep you fighting over trivial things.
Right.
We have got to focus. And the last thing I wanted to say about Jesse Jackson was his transition signaled something for us. Now, he died at 84, right? So in celestial language, 8 and 4 is 12, and 1 and 2 is 3, which we know is a foundational number, 3, 6, and 9. Okay. And this began when we did that, when that solar eclipse happened on your birthday, brother, in 2025.
Yes.
We knew that something significant was going to happen. Okay. Because when you look at your birthday, April 8th, 4 and 8, that's 12. That's 1 and 2, that's 3. Then we look at 2025, that's 2, 0, 2, which is 4, and 5, that's 9.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we look at your birth year, 63.
Wow.
And you've already put that out, that's 9.
Yeah.
So, brother, this is why you're a lightning rod. That's why you have these azul forces that always come at you. Okay. Everybody doesn't have that. We have different administration of gifts, but you can't get jealous of somebody because the creative spirit chose them for the characteristics they have. That's just the way it is.
Right.
But again, we've been taught by these people to hate on the people that have been given to us to help us fight against it, which is really twisted. And we're going to break down a lot of this today.
Yes.
And so that began, we knew that when you have 3, 6, and 9, even study the work of, what's his name? Tesla. Did you know that Tesla would never stay in a hotel room that didn't have 3, 6, 9 or 9, 6, 3?
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, never would. And he also said that if you want to know about life in the universe, then study energy, vibration, and frequency. And so the brother we're talking about today, Benjamin Banneker, he's one of possibly 3 men I can think of in history. And so when you go back to the speech that Gaddafi made at the UN, it wasn't the speech. They always lie about things with this propaganda. It wasn't that speech is the reason why they wanted him out. Mm-hmm. It was what he said to the BBC network prior to that speech. He said, well, we don't have to, in other words, we don't have to accept any type of religious ideology that they put on us, because we are the only nation of people that had the first temple or shrine built to a man god, which was Imhotep, which his shrine was in the mountains of Libya. And boy, they were, let me tell you, these Azul people, they were so upset with him. And then what Hollywood Wood tried to do? Degrade Imhotep, the greatest multi-genius ever to walk the planet, that built the step pyramid of Saqqara. The first thing they try to do is make him a mummy. Are you crazy? Imhotep was the first astronomer mathematician that the world knew. Also medical doctor. Okay.
It's a lot.
This brother was a we have never known anything like this. Engineer. So Gaddafi said, well, we have the shrine in our hills, which it was. And the Greeks call him Aesculapius. And they would go to that temple of Aesculapius. That is a fact. Many of our scholars have taught us that. Dr. Ben, ASTRONOMY, you go down the line. Okay. Dr. Kaba, all these people have told us and have studied, what's his name? Dr. Anthony Browder, who, by the way, wrote a brilliant book. What is it called? Egypt on the Potomac. Brilliant book that we're going to see today. That the other thing, Benjamin Banneker, when you're an astronomer and a mathematician, then by default, you're a master mason, okay? Which they copied. That's a topic for another day.
Right.
But when the capital is set up on a prime meridian, and this is where the power came from, then only someone like Benjamin Banneker was able to construct that, okay? And in Dr. Browder's book, he talked about how these people, at first, they didn't recognize the Masonic symbols. But once they, like they do, they study our history and they find out stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so this is something that's above our pay grade. So we need to consult, like they do. They consulted with people from the East to find out what these symbols meant, because they had no knowledge, spiritual knowledge of what these symbols meant.
That's right.
Okay, just like I always like to tell this story, when they first went into Kemet and they saw the bearded man, the throne, and the all-seeing eye, they got very frightened because they had never seen these type of powerful symbols before. And so I was telling you once, Lance, in a video we did a few years ago, why you'll never see a white man in power that's not clean shaven. Because that symbol still is in their subconscious. So they know that. That's why when they see black men with beards, well, they fear all black men, whether you got a beard or not, okay? It's your aura. But the point is that's a point of contact for them. So in other words, they're looking like, oh, so we know that this is something counterfeit to what's in us. So yeah, let's deep dive into this brother today. The other scripture that I want to give before we deep dive into this.
And let me check something on the stove real quick and just continue on. I'll be right back.
Go ahead, man.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Romans 1:28. And even as they refused to have God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a depraved or reprobate mind to do things that are improper and repulsive. Now let that sink in for a minute, and you think about who and what that's referring to. Okay. Also, the two greatest gifts, okay, that can exist inside any human being, or two of the greatest gifts, is what we refer to as astronomers, or having the ability to read celestial language, and also mathematicians, or having the universal knowledge to calculate universal and terrestrial language, which is mathematics. So here we see, and we'll see later on in the presentation, how the president of the United States, the first president of the United States, not America, George Washington, actually, well, it was Thomas Jefferson that brought this to his attention, because they had already known that they could not go. This is what got, what's his name, L'Enfant, the French engineer and surveyor. This is what frustrated him, that you could not set up a city on a prime meridian without having the knowledge of the stars and mathematics. And once he found out that there were no white males in America with this ability, but it was a black man, and the nerve of them to, because he knew he had to yield to a higher power with Benjamin Banneker. So he rolled up his little blueprints and he left. Okay, because no matter what they say, and if it wasn't for Major Thomas Ellicott, who actually knew Benjamin Banneker and his family, we'll go through that today, we may have had a different story. Okay, now one of the things that we have to look at when we're talking about this type of connection to celestial language and mathematics, we already have a blueprint on the planet. It's the Dogon tribe. Okay, and they did something very, very remarkable that Europeans begin to describe them as aliens. Okay, but they were able, okay, to identify not just Sirius A, the brightest star in the solar system, but also, on which they call Sigitolo, but also Sirius B, which was a dwarf star that had a orbital pattern, within Sirius A. And they call this star Potolo. And every 60 years, they had a Sigi, okay, that they worshipped the Nomo based on this. But here's the interesting thing about this. It is what you call a dark star. It is so deep in our solar system that it cannot be seen by the unaided eye. So now you tell me how it was possible for the Dogon to see a star, a tiny star, in the dark spaces of the universe. So they said that the Nomo, who were these amphibian beings that came to Earth and gave them 360 symbols, which one of them they correctly drew Saturn, okay, and its moons and the rings around it. They correctly drew Jupiter and the stars that, the moons that orbited around them. And they had the first drawing of the circular blood system within the human body. So they were kind of freaking out, European scientists. Now, how did they get this knowledge that this is not possible? But it wasn't until this scientist, this German scientist, Oppenheimer, I believe his name was, he lived amongst the Dogon for years. And so he was able to, see, our people didn't always give up free information like we do now. Yeah. That's why they're able to neutralize and checkmate us so much. So he had to first live amongst the people, whether you call yourself a scientist or not, before you were able to sit with the elders. And I think it was 5 years before they were comfortable enough to let him sit with the elders. And then the elders started telling him why they had these different, why they had the Sigi, right, and why they had these different dances. They were actually mapping out the orbital pattern of Sirius B, a star that cannot be seen with the unaided eye. But in 1862, astronomers verified the existence of Sirius B to their amazement with powerful telescopes. And that again, the star is not visible to the unaided eye, and they successfully drew the circulatory blood system in the body. Now, before we go into the other visuals and discuss this very important topic today, and why this man is so important to not just Black people, but to the world and to our nation's capital. The nation's capital defied the Creator's divine and natural laws. How do we know that? Because we're going to see from Benjamin Banneker himself, when he sent them a letter about the hypocrisy of the Declaration of Independence, okay, or that all men are created equal. But they have become a den of thieves, okay, because they have outright rejected the melanin power that built the capital of the United States. It was a Black man who was the primary surveyor. And I know in their history books, they say Thomas Ellicott. Thomas Ellicott wrote in his diary before his death. And that's the one thing, again, I always say, I don't think Europeans thought that Black people would never learn how to read and write, I guess. I don't know, but they wrote all this stuff down. He said that it was the blessing of his life from God to have known Benjamin Banneker.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, here you have a Black man, the Creator. Now, at some point, we have to come to grips with something. The Creator set up the capital of the United States to do great things. But again, it's your free will. You're not going to be, and that free will has to align itself with divine and natural laws, which we know they have turned against. But not only this great Black man, but the capital and all of our great universities, Harvard, or their great universities, Harvard, Georgetown, right, Yale, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, were built by enslaved. The capital of the United States was built by enslaved people. So, brother, let's go to the picture of the Capitol first.
Okay.
This
is it.
Let's go to, yeah, thank you. Now, when you look out and people come to America, they don't think to themselves, my God, this is what a brilliant, genius Black man designed. The enslaved Black people in America built this. They don't tell people this.
Exactly.
they and the other thing too is they don't want young Americans to know this, because now you got these people parading around in the capital of the US like they're so big and bad, okay? But a black man is the reason why you're in this capital. There's no question about this. So let's look at why we say, and you can leave that there for a second, brother.
Yeah.
Why we say that Benjamin Banneker was the designer of Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. First, he helped survey the nation's capital during a time in 1791 when black males, they had already framed the narrative that they were just brute beasts, right? And in 1791, as amazing as this was, Banneker was appointed to assist in surveying the land that would be Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. He worked with Major Andrew Ellicott, who was leading the project to map out the boundaries of the new federal district. Banneker used his strong skills in mathematics and astronomy to calculate precise boundary lines by observing the stars to determine exact positions. He helped establish the original borders of the District of Columbia, and this was crucial because the capital's location had to be accurately measured and documented. Okay. Also, he was recognized but for his scientific expertise at a time when Black Americans faced severe discrimination and slavery. And Banneker's appointment by President George Washington was remarkable. His work demonstrated that Black Americans could excel in science and in the field of engineering and astronomy. Okay, brother, let's put up, first, let's talk about this appointment. Let's talk about some things leading up to this. You want to put that picture up of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson sitting in that tent when Benjamin Banneker brought them the layout? Yes. Now, again, this is a picture you got to go do some digging to get, because this is why they want to shut down the Smithsonian and all these other, but if you know where to get it, you can get it. This is not in any American history book, so I would dare to say that probably 80% of the people that see this have never seen this picture before. There's the President of the United States. Now, people talk about, what's his name? I can't think of the one with the white hair that they like to say was so brilliant. I can't think his name now. Supposedly one of the founding fathers. But Thomas Jefferson was a brilliant man. In fact, he was one of the only ones that was literate to the point where he could actually understand certain things. Here you see George Washington, President of the United States. Before that, if you look behind him in the background, there is no District of Columbia. There is no capital city. And there's Thomas Jefferson, who really was the reason why Benjamin Banneker was appointed to this commission, and why they were fascinated with him. But he's showing them the plans that he drew up. Okay? And again, you can only do this if you're at a certain level with an open pineal gland, where you can read the movement of the stars by observing them, like Imhotep and some of our other great astronomers in history that built the pyramids of Giza. You can only do this with this ability. So you see Thomas Jefferson, he's showing it to Thomas Jefferson because Thomas Jefferson, again, had the ability to look at this and comprehend it. Whereas President Johnson was relying on Thomas Jefferson to give him the okay. You see what I'm saying? But here's a black man standing there with this in his hand, and it's undisputable that we would not have a capital city if it was not for this black man. That's now, right. Benjamin Banneker's ability to accurately survey and map out the boundaries of Washington, D.C. was crucial for several important reasons. Number one, he contributed to the founding of the nation's U.S. Capitol, which we just saw, creating the nation's permanent capital. And after Congress passed the Residence Act in 1790, President George Washington selected a site along the Potomac River for the new federal district. Now, again, let me tell you why first of all, when you look at a river, now oceans represent something different, okay? But rivers are like the bloodlines in our body. If you look at all of the great civilizations in history, okay, when you look at the Euphrates, the Nile, when you look at the Mississippi River here, okay, when you look at the Potomac, these rivers signify the lifeblood of a nation. And so a man like Benjamin Banneker knew that all things in nature was connected. In other words, so I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Every year, they knew that the banks of the Nile was going to overflow. So they knew when to plant so that they, once they had the fertile soil, that they have a good crop yield. But also they noticed that this certain star, okay, appeared in August, the helical rising, our helical rising. And whenever that star appeared, that's when the waters obeyed, okay? That's when the banks of the Nile overflooded. Same thing here in Mississippi, the Mississippi River. It's a brilliant story about that. But we know that that water, a river of water, has to be in sync, as above, so below, the law of correspondence, which again, they had no knowledge of, that there had to be a great river that this capital had to be built on. And that's what again, you won't read this in a history book, but he told them that, look, this district had to be set up on the banks of a river. It's like Babylon, okay? All the great cities in history that you look at, they had to have that, okay? The other reason is the exact borders had to be measured precisely to legally establish the District of Columbia. And if the boundaries were inaccurate, land ownerships could be disputed, and the federal government's authority over the district could be challenged. Construction plans could be delayed or invalidated. And accurate surveying made the capital officially and legally real. The third reason was using astronomy for precision. In other words, being able to map out the movements of the stars. In the 1790s, surveyors didn't have GPS or modern equipment. Think how amazing that is. Just like the Dogon. There was no GPS. He was GPS, okay? And I dare to say that their concept, again, like all of the things they get, the inventions that they didn't steal, they got the concepts from our brilliant brothers who had this metaphysical ability. that this GPS concept, well, not just concept, ability lived inside of our brother. See, the other thing too that they want you to think that our people were just, you know, laborers. No. Yeah. Look, the reason why they established unions is because the slaves had all of the skills. They were the carpenters, they were the engineers, they were the electricians, they had all the skills. They were the ones that taught them how they would have starved to death, how to farm, how to get a proper yield. Same thing that happened to them in a Kibalon. When they, you know, went there, they would have. So the first thing they did, and you can read this story in this brilliant book, Things Fall Apart. When they saw that these seeds and this harvest from the overflow of the Nile, they had so much seeds that they, you know, it was overflowing. The first thing they said, oh no, we got to cut this system. In other words, this is how this system that we still live by today, supply and demand, came into effect. Okay, because only a low vibratory people would do something like this when they want to control, just like when they want to control distribution. Or, you know, as cruel as this may sound, they're going to try to take over the grids to destroy people. This is going to happen, brother. I talk about this in my book, Creator versus God. They're going to do this, okay? Because, again, they're frightened. They know what you don't know about you, okay? And this is why you're destroyed for lack of knowledge. Like Hosea said, the knowledge that you have lack of is your own natural laws and divine and spiritual laws. You've given that power over to men and women. Also, not only did they not have GPS or modern equipment, but Banneker used astronomical observation, just like the Dogon, tracking stars and celestial movements to determine latitude and position with scientific accuracy. Okay, my brother, if you want to show the picture where he's instructing, I believe it was Lafayette and Thomas Ellicott, he's instructing them. No, it's I'll let you know when you hit it. Yes, right there. Now okay. You see Benjamin Banneker. Now these are supposed to be the surveyors of Washington, D.C., right? This is what they tell in the history book. But who do you see standing up explaining stuff to them? Yep. Okay, these are the lies that they tell. So the one thing I'll say about certain Europeans, even though they'll hide this stuff, the one thing that they didn't hide is when they knew there was a real superior intellect from, you know, from the real kingdom of the Creator, then they knew that they had to sit there and listen if it's going to come out right, because they didn't have this knowledge. So this is why Leofonte, or whatever his name is, who was originally the designer, supposed to be the designer, and again he got frustrated, just like they do, why they start attacking our people, because at some level they realize that they can only go so far with this knowledge, this terrestrial knowledge. They have no connection to celestial knowledge, so they get frustrated, and so they attack you, or they'll twist the narrative. So once he realized, okay, we're going to have this black man in order to make this happen, and my name is not going to be the dominant one on history's books, as the one who, you know, I heard he was very arrogant. The little blueprint that he had, he just took with him. And 3 days later, Benjamin Banneker recreated it just from surveying the stars. Now that's incredible. I don't care what nobody say.
Exactly.
That's incredible. He recreated everything that they drew out on the earth just from observing the stars. He didn't even know. So here's a man that was self-taught. He wasn't taught in their schools. Okay. Now let that sink in for a minute. Because again, you get carried away with these people talking about, oh, where you go to school at, man? Oh, yeah? Oh, okay. Well, here's the paper to show that you got the same level of understanding that I have. No, I don't think I want that paper. So what he was explaining to them, and why LeFont got upset and left, was that this has to be set up on a prime meridian. You can't just, you know, try to establish the boundaries based on what you see on the ground. The creator don't work that way. Okay. His laws don't work that way. So again, you know, this was something that was hard for him to take from a black man. But Thomas Ellicott, as we will see when we go through the history of our brother, had been knowing Benjamin Banneker since he was a teenager. And Ellicott City is a city right there in between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. I used to drive through it every day. And it's named after Thomas Ellicott. Now, the significance of astronomical movements and positioning. This is very important, what he was explaining to them in this picture. This was essential because the district was defined as a 10-mile square. Okay. The boundary stones had to be placed in exact locations, and mistakes would affect the entire city's layout. So what Benjamin Banneker was trying to explain to them is that, look, you can look through that surveyor scope all you want, but if it doesn't line up with the movement of the stars based on Masonic knowledge that he had, then you're going to have a situation where it's going to be overflowing with Maryland on one side and Virginia on the other, and you're going to have some type of conflict. Now, this is this is what John Hanson did for them. When they first came here, that story they buried, the first black president of America, who actually helped their military. Because without him explaining this to them, they would have some big problems. He went on to explain that his mathematical and astronomical skills ensured the borders were scientifically reliable. Supporting the city's design and construction, although Pierre Charles LeFont designed the city plan, that plan could not be implemented without clearly established boundaries. Now, Lance, I want to ask you, as an architect, when you finish writing up your blueprint, is that the end of the project?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, no.
So you have to have people that can construct this plan, right?
Exactly. They have to have knowledge of what you put down on paper.
Right.
So it's where the rubber meets the road.
That's right.
There has to be overlap. And you have to be able to explain if there's something they don't understand, where there's a void, where you can explain it to them where they can catch up. There's got to be an overlap.
Exactly. That's a good point. Because, and I'll use it from a coaching standpoint, the first lesson I learned from being a player to a coach, sometimes you want to run out on that court. You can practice offensive drill or defensive schemes all week. But if you don't have certain players that's going to implement that on the floor, you're in trouble. That's why veterans are always so important to organizations, to teams, because they know the system and they know how to implement the system. And then they can teach the younger players. But man, it's very frustrating being a coach, bro. Because if what happens is you can say, that's why, yes, coaches, I don't think coaches are overrated, but they are overrated in the operational aspect, just like in a company. A CEO is overrated in a sense. You have to have a visionary and a founder and somebody that's running, setting the pace.
That's right.
But you also have to have boots on the ground. You have to have a team, okay, that's operating this. So this is what you see here. So in effect, they were his team. And I think that was a little too much for from your boy, the French guy, engineer. But the other thing I learned, now my father had an 8th grade education, but he had this skill. I don't think he could read the stars, but he certainly could measure. He used to use, you remember those old measuring sticks that had the little yellow liquid in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he used to use those. He built all 3 of our houses, and also he built all 7 of the churches.
Wow.
In different places, even the one in Buffalo, New York, but not by itself.
No, I understand.
Yeah, with the pastors and the deacons. And he had this gift. And so I know that, you regard, and my father drew out stuff on paper. He used to have this big paper, and he would have, and then he would put stones in certain places. I witnessed this. One of the things I regret is that I didn't take the time to learn this skill from my father. I was so inundated from a young age with sports. Okay. Yes. However, and I'll never forget my brother who went into the military at a young age. Me and him were closest in age, and we used to have to help him. And before he left, he said, "Well, I guess now you're going to be Bishop's right-hand man." And he started laughing. I was like, oh, my God. Because we'd be out in that backyard for 2 or 3 hours, maybe longer than that. And I'm thinking some days, man, I want to go, play football or basketball. And I got to be stuck here. But, yeah, that's one of the regrets I have in life is that I didn't learn that skill from him. But so, again, we're talking about a man that was not educated in a Harvard or Yale or Georgetown, okay, or Ivy League school, or Princeton.
Right.
But yet, he did something that no other American had the ability to do. Also, the surveying was the foundation upon which roads, buildings, and property divisions were built. Okay, Black men had this skill. And you look at these places that they tell you all these stories about manifest destiny. You don't know it was those slaves that was out there surveying and putting up those bricks, those boundaries, saying, "Yes, sir, massa, this way you gotta put the rope. This is where the boundary is." Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They don't tell you that. With no boundaries, there's no organized city or capital. See that? And 4th, protecting federal authority. So Washington, D.C. was created as a federal district and not part of any state. Again, it was surrounded by Maryland and Virginia. So the national government could operate independently, and the precise boundary mapping ensured that the district was separate from Maryland and Virginia, and that the federal jurisdiction was clearly defined. Political conflicts between states were minimized because of this. And finally, Banneker's surveying work mattered because it became the most important work in our nation's history. Finally, about this, why he is important today is that he contributed to the founding of the U.S. Capitol. He was one of the nation's first prominent Black scientists, and his knowledge and achievements challenged racist beliefs about Black men at this time. All right, brother, so let's go into, if you put up this picture where they have different shots of him explaining what he actually did. Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so here we see Benjamin Banneker, astronomer and city planner. That's what they call him today, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
City planner. So here you're looking at, now he was much bigger than a city planner. He was actually, when you look at Washington, D.C., when it was just a plot of land, you say, God, what kind of mind does it take to construct something to the precise Masonic order that's aligned with the stars? When you think about this, brother, this is incredible. Okay?
It is.
And you have two bordering states that he had to have a precise diamond boundary that there could be, and even he had the foresight, thank you, Creatrix, to tell George Washington and Thomas Jefferson is that, look, we have to make sure that this is precise, because if we don't, one day these major states, Maryland and Virginia, could take you to court over land. Mm-hmm. And he was spot on. This was in the 1791 or 1790. Now, at 22, using a borrowed watch as a model and a pocket knife as his only tool, he constructed the first clock made in America. And it accurately, I don't know why they have 20 years, it's more like 40 years, right, Lance? It kept accurate time for over 40 years. I don't know where that 20 years come. Again, the people that put this, they always want to minimize stuff.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, no question. Now look at where he's planning. This is the other thing. He was planning for peace in time of war. And he was one of the first advocates against U.S. aggression in his famous almanac in 1793. And again, Lance, in your description, you talk about how convenient it is for they burnt down his farm, huh?
Yep.
With all of his, they did the same thing with
paperwork and everything, notes.
Yeah, they burned down. They did the same thing with Timbuktu. They couldn't do it at the University of Sankora because the Moors wouldn't let them do it.
See?
In Spain. Oh, yeah, they're always destroying the truth about our people because they don't want the world to know where they actually get their knowledge from.
You know, the funny thing, it's like they're chopping off their foot to spite the leg. Like, they would benefit from this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So why wouldn't you? I mean, just because it's a melanated Black man who did it? I mean, this is crazy. Just to show you the mentality. Crazy.
That really shows you who the low IQ people are. Now, again, this is a double-edged sword because on the one hand, this judgment that we know, again, that was put in place on that solar eclipse in 2025 on your birthday, it ushered in this judgment because now you've turned against the people that God sent to you to really make America great. But you have denied them in your corridors of power. Not only denied them their rightful place, But in your history books, you lie about what their contribution to this great nation, or it was a great nation, is. Now, again, Thomas Jefferson, to me, was one of the most brilliant people or founding fathers, and is the reason why that the United States was able to move forward. Because he recognized, and we'll see a little later on, the fact that he played a tremendous part in Benjamin Banneker being able to do this. Okay, so on the advice of Thomas Jefferson, he was placed on the commission, which in itself is, could you imagine in 1790 putting a black man on a commission that will construct the greatest, one of the greatest cities in the history of mankind, on the commission which surveyed and laid out the city of Washington, D.C. Okay, thank you, brother. You can go to another picture.
Sure.
And then we're gonna go into a few things. You can leave that there for a second. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have moved away from it.
No, that's fine. You can leave that there.
Right.
Yeah. So Benjamin Banneker, the astronomer and mathematician and designer of Washington, D.C., was the creator of the first farmer's almanac that accurately predicted weather patterns for farmers. I'll let that sink into you. Because again, at this time, no one had this knowledge. Okay. And without this knowledge, things would have happened in early America that would have been crippling to the growth and development of a young nation. Okay, we talked about the fact that he was the inventor of the first clock in America, but also one of the things they keep out of the history book, much like when they went to the shrine of Imhotep or Asclepius, the Greeks, to worship him, people came from all around the world to see his clock. They were amazed. This was a major feat. Okay, this was a humongous feat. How many of our children know this? What do you think would make a difference with a lot of our boys that's out here lost if they had this type of hero? Okay, if they knew about him, because they didn't learn about him in the history books. They might have heard his name, but they never knew what he did. Also, he invented celestial instruments to study the movement of celestial bodies, the sun, moon, and stars, which was the sundial, because you have to be able to track the sun, the heliacal rising of our people. This is what we did. We were moved by the movement of natural laws, which was the sun. So he created an instrument that they had never seen before. It was a sundial. And he created a telescope and created what they eventually named the Banneker Almanac. Again, he predicted the first solar eclipse that Americans became aware of. And weather patterns, which were critical to what you see today what do they call these people that are on TV, meteorologists? There's your first meteorologist right there. Next time but somebody say that. So what they do is they give these people these big titles like they, doing so much. But, and it does take ability. I don't need to minimize people's abilities. All I'm saying is give the credit where it's due. Because without this first meteorologist, there would be no field of meteorology. That is a fact. But this began a lifelong pursuit of astronomical knowledge that earned him worldwide recognition among scientists and astronomers of his time. He successfully also identified new stars and accurately predicted celestial events such as eclipse. The big one in 1789, he predicted a solar eclipse that garnered the attention of Vice President Thomas Jefferson. Now, this is when he came under the radar of Thomas Jefferson. There was no white man in America. I don't care what kind of Nazi salute or Hitler-loving salute you give. There was no one that had this ability. So as daunting as this seemed, Thomas Jefferson, and they need to be very thankful for this man, Thomas Jefferson. He's someone that even though he was a white man, you know, and he was mixed with other things, I have some respect for him. Even though he was a slave owner, that kind of knocked out most of the respect. The respect I have for him is his ability to recognize when the Creator sent someone to help you move forward. And also, there was something about Benjamin Banneker that he recognized that he, I don't know if submitted is the right word, but in some sense, he, what's the word? Compromise. Mm-hmm. He had to compromise that master slave ideology he grew up on and that existed in white males during that time, because he recognized he was a great man, okay, that's going to change the destiny of our nation. Okay, so Thomas Jefferson was fascinated when he learned about the fact that Benjamin Banneker, and the way he learned about it, again, was from Major Thomas Ellicott, whose family, when they moved in that valley in Maryland, where Ellicott City is, they knew the Bannekers. We're going to go into a little bit of that history. But from this relationship with Thomas Jefferson, Jefferson, impressed with this feat, engaged in a correspondence with him and brought him into the acknowledgement of powerful government figures in 1753. In 1753, he designed, again, a wooden clock that accurately kept time, and he also owned and operated a tobacco farm successfully. Okay. All right, brother, if you want to go to another picture, I think
sure.
Yeah. We're going to talk about this. Now, there's something very interesting. I don't know that much. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's leave this here, because here we see another aspect of Washington, D.C. We have the obelisk, or what our people call the Tekenu in Kemet. But you can see the landmass that he had to survey. You're looking at that. No one else had this ability. Also, he set up the Tekenu because, or he advised them to set it up because that was our first sundial. Yes. Okay, and you can go back in antiquity and see. I can't remember the African scientist that Archimedes or something like that. I'm not sure, but he, from the Tekenu, the shadows of the sun would bounce off it every time it went to a different position. So he had this knowledge as well of Masonry. Okay. Now let's talk about something that's so fascinating. Again, at a spiritual level, why they have our people fighting in the diaspora. Okay. And we're going to see this today. Now, his grandmother came to America as an indentured servant. And of course, after 7 years, she was given some land, like all indentured servants that came from Europe. Now, the story goes that she was a mulatto woman, or in other words, she was the product of a white male and an indigenous female, or more.
Right.
Because she could not work the farm herself, she purchased 2 slaves from West Africa. Now, this is where the plot thickens. One of them, unbeknownst to her, was a prince, a Dogon prince, a Mali prince, the son of a Mali king from the Dogon tribe. Now, think about that for a minute, brother.
What's the chance?
What's the chance of, but the thing is he has the same exact gift that the Dogon had.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's, so you could see these counterfeit spirits once they became aware of this. They don't know everything. They find out stuff because they snoop a lot. And then our people talk a lot. So, but they found out this connection. Okay, because they had but at this time, they didn't know about Sirius B. They hadn't verified it yet. Right. But they had heard about the Dogon and their power. But an interesting thing happened. Now, his name was Panicky. Okay, I guess that's what his name when he came from Akibalon. Panicky. Banneker, rather, not Panicky. But from his knowledge of farming, and again, a lot of our people, the ones that came from Akibalon and the ones that were already here, had this natural knowledge of planting and harvesting, okay, or sowing and reaping, as they use in religious terms that our people are familiar with. This was the natural knowledge that all of our people had. But from this knowledge, he did something that none of the other farms. This is why Black farmers can survive. They know these natural laws. He created the first irrigation system that flooded the fields on their farm. Think about that. He knew that there was water under the ground. The high IQ people didn't know this. And when rain was scarce, so the irrigation system and hard work secured the fertility of their land, where all of the other farmers in that valley died their crops. But Benjamin Banneker taught them how to set up irrigation systems. This is another thing they don't talk about. So much like Dr. George Washington Carver, who Henry Ford recognized this natural gift in him and worshiped him. In fact, that's where you get the term in the Industrial Revolution, plants, where they built stuff. See, they have to relate stuff on a 90-degree level to natural laws, but they have our people twisted around where we do the same thing. Okay, so he had to relate a physical plant where you see humans operating like systems in the natural world or plants to cultivate stuff. So that's how he had to tie that knowledge in. They were producing good crops when the other farms were failing. So she ended up marrying him.
Oh, wow.
She was like, oh, no.
I ain't letting this go.
Okay. That she recognized with the quickness. So she married him, and they produced Benjamin Banneker's father, who eventually married his mom, and then they produced Benjamin Banneker. The other thing is, as a result, their landings grew with each successful year of farming. So in other words, he was able to expand his farming holdings because the other farmers depend on him. See, this is where when they teach you this stuff, when they talk about their master classes and they charge you for this knowledge that you already have, what they're saying is that your self-worth, you have to know your self-worth, okay, in order to expand. And that your self-worth will automatically allow you to accrue wealth. Okay, that's why they spend so much time degrading Black people, and why we have to buy Gucci and clothes, and they talk about the celebrities, what they're wearing on the red carpet. This is why they have to do this, because in reality, they're the real low IQ people. Okay. So what he did is he started buying up a lot of the white farmland. And what he did in the end was really amazing. So his land holdings grew. Now let's talk about how he opened up to this kingdom energy knowledge, or this consciousness knowledge that Yeshua talked about. As a child, he read the Bible and discovered its secret scientific codes. There are scientific codes in the Bible, but we only get exposed to the emotional part of it. Because when you connect to this scientific code like you're supposed to, then it's going to take you somewhere else where you're supposed to be. Okay. But again, we go through these rituals, like when the Druids had to put all of their natural belongings on the altar to Azul before they went out into battle. This is what you got to do when you go into their churches. You have to pay, they call tithes, where you're really paying this spirit. And the ones that's why they're falling. Because the ones who have tricked our people and have been used to pimp our people out of billions of dollars, trillions now, they're being held accountable right now. And it shows at the root of this system is utter wickedness. And it's imploding right now.
Yes,
I don't care how many wars you start, it's not going to change anything. And you know, the sad part about this, it is the poor, Black, white, and Latino kids, Asian, all Americans that are going to these wars.
Yep.
These rich people are not sending their children to war. They're not. And this is something that didn't have to happen. From the experts I listened to that were in the military at the command level said this was absolutely unnecessary, that they weren't, a threat to the United States.
Right.
But of course, we know who really runs our government, right? Okay. The one who actually bows down to Azul and that can kill babies and people and wipe out whole districts with no kind of remorse.
None at all.
None at all. It takes a real demon to do that. And when you study Azul, in modern times they call him Baal. But when you study this entity that they have always worshipped in antiquity, you see this. They've never, they go into these back rooms with these people who try to read, and they consult these mediums. And we know this. We learned this from somebody leaked something about Ronald Reagan. This is how we know they do this every day. They consult these astronomers. They're not astronomers, astrologers. And they consult them. And so even though they can pick up things in the electromagnetic field they don't ultimately know what it means. They just know that it's some energy there. So then they get frightened, and then they have to supply more blood to a zoo, okay, or they have to supply more cruelty. Or people have to suffer. The human spirit has to suffer, okay, more, and it's never enough. That's why no matter what you get from that Azul system, you'll never be satisfied. Never. Unless you're actually using it for a mission. So finally, as a child, he read the Bible and discovered his secret scientific codes. And when a new school opened up nearby, he was most interested in mathematics. The teachers were fascinated by his ability to pick up things and then break them down. And sometimes his quick-minded wit fascinated his own teachers, who he actually taught. But he did extra projects for his teachers, and after graduating from school, he continued to work on the farm. With his teachers' help, he continued his studies as well. Okay, brother.
Yes.
Do we have one more picture, or is that it?
Yeah, I think we have this one that you...
Oh, yeah. So, I wanted to tie that one in. I actually forgot about this one, to show this continuity of genius and natural laws, where the Dogon, okay, they were able to see Sirius B, that small star there, against Sirius A, or what they call Sigitolo, the brightest star in our system. That was another reason why they couldn't see it as well, even with powerful telescopes. So you see here this knowledge.
Yeah, brother, continue on. Let me answer this phone call.
Yeah, right, bro. They mapped out the stars. You can take down that picture if you want. They mapped out the stars. And so this particular knowledge, this is why when I was reading about what Hosea said, that we are destroyed in all areas of human activity because of a lack of knowledge. This is what he's referring to. Now, as time passed, more and more people became aware of the extraordinary gift of this remarkable young man. 10 years after Benjamin Banneker met a family named Ellicott who moved into the valley, they quickly became friends with the Bannekers. And they were Quakers from Pennsylvania. And that's how when Major Ellicott, became who he was, he never forgot Benjamin Banneker. Because they wasn't gonna they had to put a military man in charge of this project for various reasons. However, Benjamin began to help them assemble instruments for their mills. They were amazed with his abilities, and in appreciation for his valuable help, they gave him a set of books and a new telescope for his study in astronomy. It was the beginning of a passion that would come to define the rest of his life. And soon he was communicating with other scientists and solving complex problems. He got to a point where he realized that, he had a greater mission, time to move beyond the farms. So he, after, gaining several farms, he sold them to the Ellicotts and began spending all of his time during the night and early mornings stargazing and mapping out the heavens. In 1791, at 16 years old, he gained national recognition from being appointed to the commission to design the capital city, Washington, D.C. This was an extremely high honor for any man, let alone a black man. Working with his friend and fellow surveyor, Major Thomas Ellicott, and Chief Engineer Pierre L'Enfant, who eventually quit the commission, Banneker took it upon himself to survey the land, which was a monumental task for anyone. Finally, as we said, L'Enfant, in a fit of anger, suddenly took his blueprints with him, in which Banneker recreated all of it from just mapping out the stars. We can say without any doubt that there would be no city called Washington, D.C., and no capital of the United States without the genius of this brilliant man. As a result, he mapped out the stars to design the city based on the prime meridian, okay, and he published the almanac, okay, we talked about this, predicting the weather and solar events. However, finally, he suffered great mental anguish seeing his brothers and sisters still in bondage because he believed so much in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal because of his deep, abiding faith in God, whom he knew had given him and chosen him to be the carrier of this knowledge. And so he knew there was a higher calling than what was happening on, in his time. Also, with the reality that our president, George Washington, and vice president, whom he eventually became friends with, the vice president of the United States, the first one, still owned slaves. In 1791, Banneker sent Jefferson a copy of his almanac, along with a letter questioning how the president and vice president of the United States could still hold his brothers and sisters in such a cruel and ungodly state. Jefferson, for his credit, responded by saying that it was his fervent desire to one day lift all Black people out of this ungodly condition of despair. And as a token of respect and appreciation, Jefferson did something that no other Black man had ever had done. He sent the manuscript of the almanac, of Banneker's almanac, to the Academy of Science, which was in Paris, that L'Enfant was also a distinguished member of. That's probably why his ego was really hurt when he realized that the plans could not be constructed or carried out without Benjamin Banneker. But this Academy of Science in Paris, where it attracted the interests of the top scientific minds all over Europe. And finally, Banneker's almanac and name became world-renowned as a result of the actions of Vice President Thomas Jefferson. I think I'll end the show with that today, brother. And as we see, things are going to get progressively worse in that world, simply because there is a recognition based on what these mediums have told them. Like James Baldwin said, the fire next time, it's not going to be water. Okay, it's going to literally be fire coming from the skies. So they know this. And so they're looking at, well, who has the capability of bringing this type of destruction to us? And so when you have someone or someones who are not connected to the creator creatrix spirit, then they have no sense of Me'at laws, of truth, justice, righteousness, okay, and balance. They have no conceptual knowledge of this. So they operate off of what I call a tit for tat mentality, or an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You know, whatever you do to me, I'm going to do to you. And people who have higher consciousness, they never revert to that level.
Right.
All right, my brother. I think I'll end the show today.
Okay, brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we have put out the real fact about who the individual responsible for developing and constructing and designing this city that you see these people walking around that claim they have so much power, but at the same time, you're walking around in a facility, in a building that is, I used this script last week, having a form of godliness but denying the power.
Right.
Right? This great power of you melanin that they're so afraid of, that fire is getting ready to rain down. And I want Black people to hear me very, very closely. Okay, very closely. Do not take sides in this war with Azul. I'm not telling you have to take sides with anybody. You don't. Do not get sucked into, we know the coons and coonettes are going to do this. Do not turn your back on the creator creatrix spirit, because you're going to put yourself in a serious situation. Okay. Right. All right, my brother. Well, keep up the great work, brother. Hold on to the belts.
Yes.
Peace and love to you and the family.
Thank you, brother. And
I look forward to another round next week with you guys.
Yes, we are. We're going to burn it up this week, too.
I know you will. Well, I see you everywhere.
All times of day and night.
I know, right? When do you sleep, by the way? Do you sleep?
I'm like a machine. I don't sleep. I just idle.
I know. Boy,
I get it in, though. I get some good sleep.
Okay,
but I time everything. I press it. I stay on it.
I know AI is definitely you on their radar. That's for sure. All right, my brother, you take care of yourself.
Okay, thank you, brother.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I'll give another peek at this banner, too. Thank you, Brother Neil Frazier, once again. It's been wonderful. And what can I say? A lot to think about. I want to thank you all for being here. I got a couple of phone calls that I do have to make. I'm supposed to get up really early tomorrow, but I'm going to try to squeeze something else in tonight. As you well know, I'm 5 hours ahead. So whenever it gets later for you, it's really late for me. And when it gets dark out here, up in these mountains, the bed starts calling you. But I have my tactics and ways of working around that. So I continue to do so. But yeah, I'll give you one last look at that banner. And we're going to hit some music. And I'm going to do some freestyle stuff, as opposed to my little short human nature things, because sometimes I have so much little things to do that I'll make those. But, throw some topics at me and let me know what you want to talk about. I already have a few requests, and I want to get down on some freestyle lives. And folks have been asking me for that. Just zone out, just spaz out and just talk. And that's what I want to do. And have some fun. It'll be a roller coaster ride. We don't know where we're going, but there'll be definitely some good things that'll come out. But yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to try to create some stuff. And all through the week, we'll be rocking with it. Tomorrow, when I do go out, I may do a short live on YouTube when I'm out. And I don't know what time that's going to be because I'm going to play it by ear. I have a lot of things that I have on my list, and I am going to get them done. There's no doubt about that. And I'm looking forward to, vibing with you as always. And let me just wrap this down, and we're going to keep coming back with the work. I love you all. Thank you so much. Take care.